Are fans of high-quality entertainment? So for this video, I'm going to talk about the first 5 bands that I became a fan of in when I was young, in the 60s, starting with a certain band that you might know. And then also the last 5 bands that I have, gotten into in the last year or so. Some of these, especially from the 60s, it's kind of blurred, like which band I became a fan of after this band, of course, the Beatles. And I don't even remember, obviously, I think the first time, I don't know if, I'm sure my sisters had the Beatles in the house, maybe 45s. I kind of remember, the Capitol Swirl 45 with Twist and Shout, If I Fell, I believe. And I think the very first vinyl record that was in the house was this, but it was Meet the Beatles, the Canadian version of this. So that's the first. The second band that I became a fan of, and I'm still and I will mention if I'm still a fan or not, of course, too. The second band was the Monkees. Yeah, I really, I think there was a point early on I was thinking, do I like the Monkees more than the Beatles? And, and feeling a little guilty about it. And here is the vinyl. This is from Molly. Molly had this in her family's collection. And yeah, I remember getting this for my birthday in, I guess, it would be 1966, I believe. The years go by so fast. But yeah, I remember staring at this album cover here for hours on end, listening to the album. Still, so many great songs too. Saturday's Child. My favorite actually is Sweet Young Thing by Mike Nesmith. Last Train to Clarksville, of course, and Papa Jean's Blues. And yeah, I was a Monkees fan, and I still am today. And even recently, when I talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there's always somebody that comments, because I mentioned the Monkees not being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and somebody will bash them, saying, they were just actors and everything, and it's gets tiring after a while because they belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think. The third band, I'm pretty sure, was this band here, and the very first album I ever heard by them, Bio Country by Creedence Clearwater Revival. I love that album cover. And the back cover too. And yeah, this along with Cosmo's Factory is my favorite, are my 2 favorite CCR albums. And my all-time favorite 2 songs are Ramble Tamble from Cosmo's Factory and Keep On Chooglin', which I used to do air guitar to back. I'm the first one that did air guitar, I think. But yeah, CCR, and of course I'm still a fan today. Creedence Clearwater Revival. And these last 2 bands are more heavy. It was kind of, in the 60s, it was pop music, and I enjoyed it, Paul Revere and the Raiders and other bands like that, the hit singles. But these bands were heavier. And I had, not really a friend, he was just like kind of a friend's brother, and he was just super nice. He was older, but he was always really nice to me, and he would let me borrow his albums. And I think, the very first Grand Funk album that he lent me, on vinyl, of course, was Grand Funk. And right away I was a fan. And this live album was probably one of the first vinyl records I ever owned, besides the Beatles and CCR. And I still love it today, of course. It's still my all-time favorite live album. And then the real heaviness came in. And once again, I'm pretty sure this was the very first album I heard. I was over at a friend's house, and his brother was playing the song Paranoid from this album, Paranoid. And it was just so different, right? But I loved the music right away and became a fan. And then the first album of theirs, I believe that was in my collection, was Master of Reality. And I'm still a fan today. But just of the Ozzy years, I never really followed them after, Ozzy left. Not that they're not, they didn't put out some great albums. Okay, now currently, and this is just kind of guessing, right? Because, listen to so much music and there's so many different bands that, even older bands like the Moody Blues and Procol Harum, that I'm more of a fan of today than I was in the past. But 5 bands, not in any particular order, except maybe this first one. Okay, The Residents. I'd always heard of them. I'd heard of this album, Duck Stab, but never really heard the whole album. And I finally bought it, and I became a fan. This is still my favorite Residents album I ever bought. And I ended up buying some more, like Meet the Residents and like 2 or 3 others. But what I've noticed is, and it does happen, right? You kind of lose interest in, you're kind of obsessed with a band you haven't heard before, but it kind of dies out quickly. And this kind of happened with the Residents, but I still, appreciate them and will keep them in my collection. And I do listen to this once in a while, Duck Stab. Okay, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I had more than one viewer, a few years back saying, oh, you got to check out this band. And, there's so many bands that you check out yourself, right, with Spotify or whatever. And then now I'm doing these Patreon requests, so I hear a lot of different genres and bands and everything. I even did, just today, I did a classical, I listened to a classical song. And I finally checked out King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and became a fan. I think they're one of the best bands going today. Excuse me. And this is one of my favorite albums of theirs, Paper Mache Dream Balloon. But yeah, I've got I think 5 of their albums, and I love them all. Very impressed with them. This band I knew of. I'd heard in the 70s, might have had one of their vinyl records in the 80s. But after that, I kind of ignored them for many, many, many years. And then I got back into them and I started, having a deep dive with their early albums. And I absolutely love. And Glenn Kellaway, we're doing the CD exchanges, and I know he has Remember the Future, and he really likes that. And other albums he wasn't as crazy about as earlier on, but now he's becoming a pretty big fan too. And this is another one of the many great early Nektar albums, Journey to the Center of the Eye. So great band. And for this band, once again, Glenn had this in his collection. He'd heard it's one of the best, on the Steve Hoffman forums, one of the best double albums ever. It was on one of those lists. So he bought it, and he didn't really know what to think of it. Not that he disliked it or liked it. I think he was confused. So he lent it to me, and I ended up buying Can, Tago Mago. It's weird. It's freaky. but I loved it. And then I bought, I'm only missing one of their, I think it's their final studio album, which I still need to get. But I love their albums. Future Days and this are two of my favorites by them. And finally, of course, a band I've talked about a lot. I'd heard of this band for years and years and years. And they said, oh, if you love Sparks, you'll love this band. Not necessarily, really, but in a CD exchange, it was Brian Massey. He gave me this album to check, listen to for like a week on Spotify. And I was so impressed with it. I bought it. And then, I ended up checking further into their discography. And I am a huge fan of the band Ween. And this was the first album of theirs I ever heard, Quebec. Then I bought The Pod, which I hated. I had to get used to it because it was so different from Quebec. And yeah, I'm a huge, huge fan of Ween. They're probably my third favorite band of all time right now. And that's it. And, doing this video and thinking, especially the early bands I loved, there was Led Zeppelin. I should have had them in the video, but I kind of forgot. Yeah, I think it was Led Zeppelin 2 that I heard first. One of my brothers bought the album. The Doors. Once again, it was my brother's, I didn't have them in my collection. My brothers did, but I could, listen to their albums. I think The Soft Parade was the first one that I really loved. And yeah, there's other bands too, but that's the way memories go. They fade away and you forget. So I would be curious, what are your first 5 favorite bands ever? And then what are your first 5 most current bands that you've gotten into? Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. Not a great day. Bye.